Hi and welcome to the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel. This is Colleen Beamish from Humor Bean Cards, and today I am so excited to be making a card using the Camellias press plate and coordinating dies from Pinkfresh Studio. This is such a beautiful set, and I'm so excited to be playing with it today. I will also be using a couple other products from Pinkfresh Studio, including the rounded and braided rectangles die set and the floral border stamp set, both of which are absolutely gorgeous and will pair perfectly with the press plates I'm using. I'm just pointing out that I am making a thank you card, so there's a couple thank you sentiments in this stamp set for me to choose from. Lastly, I will be using the Nuvo Watercolour Pencils. I have the Pastel Highlights set, but I'll also be using the Elementary Midtones. And all of the products I'm using today can be purchased at ScrapbookPal.com and are linked down in the description below, so be sure to check that out. Now I'm starting with the Betterpress system here, and this is such a cool system and so easy to pick up and use. I have my press plate, which I have stuck down to the magnetic chase, which is that base, and then I'm just taping some paper to my platen, which is this plastic piece that is magnetized to go on top. And I'm just using a tiny bit of tape, which comes with the Betterpress system. So when you purchase the system, you get the chase, the platen, some tape, some paper, which is a special cotton blend paper, and then a small black ink cube that is specifically made to work with the Betterpress. I think any ink can really be used. They do recommend using like the woven ink pad rather than like a foam ink pad. And then they also recommend doing this kind of like push and twist motion when you're adding ink to your plate. Any color ink can be used. I just went with the black ink that was included, but you can get really playful with this and do any color you want. So once I have it all set up here, I put the platen on top and then I run it through my die cutting machine. Now my die cutting machine is a little old, so I did put a piece of heavyweight cardstock just to add some more pressure when it goes through my die cutting machine so that you really get that impression. And here's the result. It is so beautiful. There's something about the letterpress that just gets all the details more so than stamping, I think. So it's a really gorgeous technique to do. I'm going to go ahead and cut this out using the coordinating die. I'm just using that same tape that I had used to put the paper onto the platen. And yeah, I'll just run this through my die cutting machine. Running it through your die cutting machine will not have any effect on the impression, like it won't flatten it out or anything. So it's okay to die cut after you already do the pressing. And now I'll get into the fun part, which is coloring in my image. So like I said, I'm using the Nuvo Watercolour Pencils. First, I'm starting with the color Oriental Orchid, and I'm just putting down a base layer of color. So this is a super easy technique, and I think watercolor pencils are one of the most forgiving mediums to use. So I'm just going in the areas that I want to be the darkest on each flower and just adding some color. And this doesn't need to be pretty. I'm just throwing it down. Because you're going to go in with your water, I'm using a water brush today, and you're just going to blend it out basically. You're going to kind of push the color around, and so it doesn't have to be perfect. It's really forgiving, like I said. So here I go in with the watercolor pencil. What I've learned using watercolor pencils is that you're really going to layer up the color. So this first wash of color does not matter all that much. You're just trying to put a single layer down. And then we're going to go in with some more color and just add layer upon layer. If you don't have a water brush, you can use a regular paintbrush with some water like you would for watercolor painting normally. And you don't want to use too much water, but the cotton paper we're using is pretty forgiving. And I would say watercolor is one of the best techniques you can do with it rather than using something like alcohol-based like Copic markers, which wouldn't go well with the cotton paper. And next I'm going in with the color Bright Honeysuckle. This is just basically a shade darker, and I believe this color is from the Elementary Midtones set. And again, I'm just putting in some more color where I want the darkest portion of the flower to be. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect because you are going to blend it out with the water. So anything goes really. And while I continue to do this, I am going to tell you a little bit of a story of why I connect so much with this press plate set. When I was a kid, I would go to my grandparents' house. I call my grandma Nana, so I'll be referring to her as Nana. But I go to my Nana's house during the summers for like a week or two, just to hang out with them. You know, it was a fun summer activity and something to get me kind of a change of environment. And this one summer, I was probably, I would guess, like maybe 12 to 14 years old. And I started to get very interested in the meaning of flowers, like the language of flowers, how each flower represents something. And so when I was getting to the end of the week that I was staying at my grandparents' house, I wanted to give them a thank you. So I went on their desktop computer and I Googled what flower means thank you. And the flower that came up was the camellia, which I had never heard of camellias before. But they were super pretty. All of the examples were pink. And so I decided I would draw a camellia flower to give it to my Nana to say thank you for letting me stay and giving me a great week at her house. So I went ahead and did that, and I gave it to my Nana, and she was so happy with it. She was so impressed that I could draw something like that. She thought it was a stamp. And then she hung it on her fridge, and it stayed on her fridge for years and years until they just sold their house a couple years ago. So when I had the option to create using the set, I immediately thought of that story with my Nana. And I knew I wanted to create a thank you card because that is how I was first introduced to camellias. You could say that camellia drawing was my first card that I made to say thank you. So it kind of felt like a full circle moment, and I have a feeling this card will be going to my Nana, and I might even do a scrapbook layout where it's like a photo of us from one of the summers I stayed there and decorate the page with these flowers, this press plate around the photo. So I really like the idea of that, but that's kind of where I'm coming from by making this card today. So if you want to create a thank you card, this set is perfect for it because it does mean thank you. Okay, back to the process. So I'm just finishing up with this color, and again, I'm blending it out. You can see kind of the depth being added. I'm making sure to leave some white space. You don't have to put color on every single portion of the flower because those highlights and that contrast is going to really add the dimension and the depth and make it look realistic. So yeah, I'm just blending this out a little bit more. I think I did end up going in with one more layer of color, or maybe I just did some coloring with the colored pencil, but I left that out because I'm going to come back around to adding more color, and you'll see like the final touch to adding some depth and dimension. But first I'm doing the leaves. So I'm going in with this color. I think it might be called Willow Creek. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a really pale green color and it's really pretty. And I'm just focusing the color on the centers of the leaves, like along the vein lines, I guess you could call them. And then again, I'm just blending that out with my water brush. Now I made sure to wipe off the water brush before I went in on the leaves because I didn't want to get any pink onto the leaves. So just make sure to wash off or like wipe it off on a paper towel before you go in to a different color. But yeah, so I'm just blending this out. And then I did decide that I wanted the leaves to be a little bit darker. I thought maybe I would just do the pale green, but I decided to go in with this color called English Ivy just to add some more depth. Again, I'm focusing that right on the middle of the flower. And I'm not too neat about this because it's such a small area that you can just kind of, push the color around, mess around with it. I think the fun part about the watercolor pencils is a little bit of experiment, like seeing which colors layer well together, how can you add depth using shadowing and everything. So it's a really fun and forgiving medium to use. I definitely recommend trying it out if you haven't before. And I would say these Nuvo watercolor pencils are a great place to start. I really liked how these worked out, and I like all the colors that they come with too. So once I have that, I'm just going to add a little bit of color to these other leaves. This is more of like a blue-green teal color, and I'm just adding a little spot of color at the base of each leaf. And I only do one layer of color on these because, like I said, they're such a small surface area that it really doesn't make too much of an impact if you add too much color. So just a little bit works for these, and I like the combination of kind of that bluish green with the other colors I have going on here. So now I'm going in with my last layer of color, and I'm actually using a red from the pencil set because I felt like my flowers were still looking a little bit flat and I wanted the shadows to be a bit more dramatic. So I'm basically just taking that red and I am putting a line of color wherever I previously established the shadows are, and you can tell how much this just really deepens those shadows and really makes it look a bit more dramatic. I will go in with the water brush to blend this out, but I didn't blend it out as much as I did with the other colors because I did want to concentrate those darker colors in those shadowed areas. So I didn't go over all the lines, just some of them that looked like they needed to be less harsh. But yeah, you can see how dramatic that looks, and I already did that on the other flowers, so this is just kind of the final flower to finish it off. And I love how that looks. I think it changed it dramatically, and I'm really happy with that. So yeah, like I said, try some different colors, layering, and see kind of how that works for you. Now I went ahead and die cut out that rounded and braided rectangle, and I'm just popping it up onto my card base using some foam tape. Both the card base and that die cut are Nina Classic Crest Solar White cardstock, heavyweight cardstock, and then I decided to also pop up my flowers, so there's quite a bit of dimension on this card. The last step for me is to stamp my sentiment. I stamped out both of the thank you sentiments that were in the floral border stamp set, just because I wasn't sure which one I wanted to use. And I did fussy cut those out. I didn't have dies to coordinate, so I fussy cut them out, and I decided to go with the stamp that said a heartfelt thank you. And I'm just using some double-sided adhesive to stick that onto my card. Now I did play around with adding some gems or crystals, but I really liked the effect of the card right now, and I didn't think that I needed to add any more bling for it to really have an impact. So this is my finished card for today. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you go ahead and give these Betterpress plates a try, and also maybe try some watercolor pencils. Like I said, everything is linked down in the description below. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel. There's always some new crafty content coming your way for some crafty inspiration. So be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!